So the folks over at Musik Hack have just given us a major update to the Master Plan plugin. We got a brand new look, gentle mid-range EQ with 3 different band options, much larger interface for high-def displays, improved monitoring for phone and N-10. Instead of on and off, LUFS targets are now adjustable on the setting screen. A clip-o-meter between the left and right meters, which I'm the most excited about, and I'll explain why in a little bit. Better preset management and export to individual files, and buttons to quickly scroll through presets. Now, in this video, I'm going to show you these new features and things of that nature, but I'm also going to show you what's happening with the Master Plan plugin. I've been a fan of the plugin for a very long time, but I've never on this channel had a chance to actually deep dive into the plugin internally and let you know, hey, this is kind of what it's doing to your audio. Now, I will be honest and let you know that this video is also sponsored by Musik Hack, which I am a big fan of. Shout out to Stan and Sam. And basically, I am going to just break down the plugin and how I like it and how I use it. I'm not here to review it or sway you in any way, but at the end of the video, if you decide for yourself that you like it or want to try it out for yourself, I'll leave a link in the description below. Now, let's get right into this plugin, and I'm going to break down what's happening internally in it. I'm going to show you some of the new things that I'm excited about, but I'm also at a very basic level going to show you each parameter, how I use it, and basically what's happening with the plugin. Let's get to it. So this is the newly updated Master Plan plugin. The design is sleek, it's clean, but it's still super easy to read, and things have been moved around just a little bit, but it's, to me, improved as far as how clear it is, as far as where things are in that nature. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go from left to right. Before I start breaking down each parameter, this is something that I feel like a lot of people may not be talking about with the plugin. As soon as you put the Master Plan plugin on, there is something happening internally within the plugin. There is a curve that is being invoked into your sound that you should actually be aware of. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn on my EQ analyzer, boom, like so. And basically it's going to allow me to tap into the plugin to see what is happening internally. So with the Master Plan plugin on, this is the curve that I'm seeing. This is with nothing on. I don't have anything, knobs turned or anything on in that nature. This is just what it innately just has on as far as the curve. If I bypass it, you'll notice, boom, it's flat, take it off. This is the curve that it invokes. So what I'm seeing is there's a little bit of a kind of cut or lowering at 200 hertz, which can typically be deemed as kind of like a muddier range. I'm assuming that's why this curve is here as far as that range in particular. Kind of makes your masters or your mix bus sound a little cleaner in that regard, taking down this range a bit. But then you're also seeing this bump about 300 hertz and above with a roll off of about, or at about 1700 hertz. So you're getting kind of like this slope or bump as far as that range is concerned, from 300 hertz to about 1700 hertz. Be aware. And then on the low end side, you're getting a little bit of a bump starting, I'd say, around that 150 hertz, which to me, I enjoy 150 sometimes when it comes to bass and things of that nature, or even just kind of adding a little bit of thickness to vocals. Don't kill me for that, but that's basically where that actual bump is occurring. So this is kind of the curve that you're invoking as soon as you put on Master Plan. It's very important to notice that. I feel like I don't see people talk about that much, but now you know. Okay, so as I look at the plugin and we're going left to right, obviously the GUI looks refreshed and new, but the first thing I noticed that wasn't there before that has now been added is this mid-band EQ. Now, I know when you look at it, you see the mid EQ, you see the low EQ and the high. Obviously, the low is affecting the low, as you can see in the EQ curve, right? The high is affecting the high, right? But what is the mid band doing? And what are these knobs on the side? So long story short, and I felt like this was pretty clever, now you can affect the mid-range. I can actually boost or cut in the mid-range of my mix bus or whatever the sound source is. But I can also now decide I want to affect the mid-lows, the mid-highs, or the high-mids. I hope I said that correctly, but you understand what I'm saying. So now I can affect basically the entire spectrum of the mid-range, but I can choose what part of the mid-range I actually want to affect. I'll show you an example. So for instance, right now, this is on the high setting as far as the mid button is concerned. I'm going to turn the mid knob like so. Cool. Big boost right there. And now what I'll do is I'll click M. you can see that when I hit the mid of the mid button, that it's kind of having like this boost right here at about 3000 hertz. And if I hit the low of the mid knob, you're seeing it boost kind of like that 800 hertz of the actual sound source. So that's pretty much the focal of the actual EQ when I hit the L. And then if I didn't explain the high is occurring around, let's say about 1100 to 10,000 hertz as far as the range. So now I can affect the mid-range of the actual sound source through the plugin with just this mid knob, but I can choose where in the mids I want it to occur. Cool. That's one of the big newer things that I'm seeing in the plugin. Right here, I did already show you kind of how the low button actually operates. If I turn this up, you're seeing I'm getting that boost right here, and it feels like it's occurring around like that 100 kind of hertz range where it's boosting all of that stuff up there. Turn this back down, or cutting. Then you can see the high button as I go up. You could tell it's around that, I'd say it's like this shelf kind of happening around like that 1500 hertz range, but you can see for yourself, obviously, as far as what it does. Use your ears to decide if you want to run with it or not and stuff like that, but you can kind of see what and how the EQ is actually shaped and how it's forming. Now, we'll go into one of the buttons. Right here, we have the thick knob. Now, the cool thing about the thick knob is it invokes saturation to the entire signal. Now, without me saying to myself, okay, well, what kind of saturation is occurring? Is it even or odd? I'm just gonna let you hear what it sounds like. So right now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take off the thick knob, right? Leave it at 0, like so. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna play a bit of audio, and as we're playing this, I'm going to increase the actual saturation of the thick knob. Remember, it's adding saturation to the entire signal. So let's check it out, take a listen. So you can hear that kind of thickening of the sound. Now, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, oh, it feels like it's adding more even order harmonics. Granted, odd order could be in here somewhere as far as how much, a little bit of it that it's adding, and I could be very wrong in this, but to my personal opinion, for me and my personal opinion, it feels like even order harmonics. And the reason why is because I'm feeling like this blooming and this musical kind of taste. It feels warm. It feels very pleasing to my ear. And in the back of my mind, that's very remnant of even order harmonics. Granted, it could be a mix of both as far as even and odd and things of that nature. But what it feels like to me is it's adding more even order harmonics to the signal. Nonetheless, you can use it for yourself. You heard it for yourself and hear that thickening of the sound. Use at your own discretion. But that's what the thick knob sounds like and feels like within the music. Okay. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna move on over to this clean knob, and let's turn back on our EQ curve analysis or analyzer, and let's take a look at what the clean function actually does. So I'm gonna click it, boom. When I click the clean knob, I automatically notice that there is somewhat of this kind of cut at around 200 hertz. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna increase this actual clean knob. As you can see, as I go up, I'm getting less and less, or a decrease at around that 200 hertz. Now, in masters or mixes, this is a common move that I've seen a lot of mastering engineers make, where if they feel like there's a little bit of, not enough clarity or a little bit of mud in a master or a mix, they'll go right to that 200 hertz range, which is different for every song, of course, and they'll take some of that stuff out. Now, granted, they have the clean knob right here for you so that you can just use it as an attenuator to kind of just mitigate that. So that's what the clean knob does. Use at your own discretion, of course, but just know that's what it does. Okay, next thing we have here is the multi-band compressor. And to be honest with you, the multi-band compressor in this plugin is very subtle. Obviously, you can use it for your own taste or whatever you want to do, but they've broken it up and made it very simple, where it's just a low band, mid band, and a high band. As soon as I click this on, I can affect or multi-band compress the low band, the mid band, or the high band, however I want. It's very subtle in the sound that it actually invokes, which is kind of what I like in a master, because I'm not looking to do these major kind of moves or destroy things so much, but I'm more or less just trying to get subtle differences that add up to a bigger picture within it. So I like how subtle it is. I'll let you hear what it sounds like. So right now what I'll do is I'll do extreme amounts on the low band, extreme amounts on the mid band, and extreme amount on the high band. Remember, this is multi-band compression. Let's check it out. Now, like I said, it's pretty subtle in what it's doing, but I can hear those differences in those changes. For instance, when I cranked up the mid and high bands, I can hear the attack on those kind of like that snare get a little bit controlled as far as how it was slashing and sloshing in the entire mix. It's very subtle, but it could be very advantageous to you if you're just looking for just subtle changes to get subtle controls on things. Even with the low end, having it cranked, I didn't notice that my low end just completely just got destroyed, but I did notice that tightening and that control. So very powerful, very easy to use. It doesn't take much to dial in settings or whatever you're looking for, and it's right there for you just to analyze and have for yourself. So that's the multi. Before we go to this top knob, let me check this smooth knob out. So right where we have the smooth knob, and basically what the smooth knob does is it's just very gentle compression, as it's carefully labeled right here. It's very subtle. It's one button, analyzes that audio and just reacts to it. But it's very, very, very subtle, and I mean that. Like, it's extremely subtle. Let me let you just take a listen to what it sounds like. So in my brain, I'm hearing that taming of those transients and stuff like that. It's very subtle, but nonetheless, you can hear that difference if you're using speakers or monitors or just kind of have a decent ear, I guess you could say. And it's very subtle compression. Use it at your own discretion, but obviously you have a small little kind of soft, gentle compressor within the plugin. Okay, now let's go above. And this right here is probably what a lot of people use if you do have the plugin or have used it before, the loud knob. And long story short, the loud knob is not just a traditional limiter where you have your threshold and you crank it and it just gets louder, but it's actually a clipper limiter in one. It's a clipper limiter function that they've created that is both in one. And it has a very interesting sound as far as how it attacks your audio. Now, here's the thing. With the new features that they've added in Master Plan, here's why I'm most excited about it. They've added a clipometer, allowing us to see how much clipping is actually occurring within the actual sound source. They've also added a clip median indicator that's letting us know, I guess, if I'm interpreting it correctly, the average amount of clipping that's happening within 512 clips. So I'm excited about it because now I can physically see how much clipping am I doing to this audio? Granted, use your ears, and that's what I was doing before. But there are times where I did want to physically see, hey, how much clipping is actually occurring? And now, shout out to them for listening and giving us this. Now we can actually see how much clipping is actually occurring within the signal. So let's try it out. I'm gonna let you look at it and see how it works as far as this clipometer. It's right here, down here at this section. Check this out. So right now I'm getting 1.9 dB of clip at max. So that means that at the biggest peak that it saw, it clipped and caught that signal, and it was 1.9 dB. Thank you. I can see exactly what's happening as far as my audio is concerned and take a decision and bring that into my decision as far as listening to what is occurring. Now, I mentioned earlier that there is a clip median indicator too. And if you read it, it says median clip amount in dB over the last 512 clips. In my opinion, it feels like it's saying, hey, over the last 512 clips, here's the average as far as how much you're clipping over time. So let's crank this, and I'm gonna crank this, and I'm gonna see how it reacts and how it moves. What should happen is the max, as far as the max amount that's happening from a clip standpoint, should be like, hey, this is the most it's clipped, and then the button, the knob, or excuse me, the indicator above it is basically going to give me, hey, this is how much clipping is occurring over time if I'm averaging everything. So sometimes I get 1 dB of clipping, but sometimes I'll get 8 dB of clipping, and then it's taking that and giving me an average. That's how my brain is perceiving it. It could be advantageous to you to know that information, but let's take a look at what it does. I'm going to crank it. I'm going to smash this thing, just letting you know. Let's listen. So you can see that the median indicator is letting us know, yeah, hey, over time, this is how much clipping you're doing from the last 512 clips that we actually analyze as far as the audio is concerned. Could be advantageous to you. It's nice to know what that does, and it could be useful in your process if you're trying to figure out how much clipping am I doing on an average. Cool. I'm gonna not crank that, but I'm gonna put that down a little bit there. Cool. All right, now let's move on to this other side. On this other side is their famous whiff knob. And I love the whiff knob. And the reason why I like the whiff knob so much is because we're speaking with Sam also, you know, they've created this whiff function that not only increases the whiff of the sound, but also still gives you that mono capability. That's very important to me because sometimes when we throw on some of these whiff plugins, especially on an entire mix, we'll get phasing issues, or we'll get things to start canceling out, or our middle information will start to disappear. This whiff knob was made with that in mind, where they have, or it's increasing the whiff, but they've also had in this special algorithm the ability to not make things feel so far away, kind of making things just feel bigger in itself and not destroy so much or at all, if I'm not mistaken, that mono capability. I'm sure someone would like to deep dive into that more, but I'll just let you hear what it sounds like for the most part. But I know that's what it has when it was created in mind, and I always ask Sam about it, and he let me know about that. So let's just take a listen to what it sounds like. So you can hear it, and I didn't notice like this huge kind of disappearing act. You know, I just felt like things just got a little bit more inflated. I noticed my sides just felt a little bit bigger. And it was very subtle, to be honest, but it was also, in a mastering standpoint, pleasing to me, where I didn't feel like it just destroyed so many things. Also, what I would like to note is you'll notice that you can actually go right underneath these knobs, the words underneath the knobs, and if I click it, I can bypass it back and forth, which was interesting to me. I did it by mistake one time, and I noticed, and I was like, oh, wow, that's cool to know. So just to let you know, just in case you didn't notice that or see that before, you can click this button right here underneath it, and it'll bypass the actual effect that you have on and off. Okay, let's put that down. Now, underneath, you have this calm setting, and what I'll do is I'll turn back on my EQ curve analyzer. Yeah, I know English, trust me. I'm gonna put this back down. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click calm and let you see what is happening within the audio. So here's calm. Boom. And what you notice is this curve gets created where it's taking out these certain frequencies that it could be deemed harsh. Now, obviously, every song is different as far as the material and things of that nature, but at the very least, there is some type of curve happening where you can click calm and it's actually attenuating certain frequencies that are, I guess you could say, commonplace when it comes to this. If I move it more to the right, you notice that these actual dips, as far as the attenuation of these particular frequency ranges, get more drastic and it's increasing. And then if I decide to hit ×2, you notice that I get more frequencies that it's attenuating within that top end. Now, granted, in this top end, I'm very aware when it comes to a master or just an overall mix, this particular top end, after adding so much saturation and things of that nature, can get very, very harsh in your ear. So it's interesting that they've chosen these specific ranges, or this particular range, to actually attenuate when it came to calming the sound down, especially that low cut, as far as how it's sloped and stuff like that, to that high end, which I've typically kind of been liking to do lately on my mixes, shaving off that extreme high stuff, because sometimes it kind of adds like this nasty kind of sound. Not always, but sometimes I like even mixing into that high cut that's up there and kind of making sure that that stuff up there isn't really cutting through, because it does add sometimes this nasty high-end sound. Don't clip that and don't make a joke out of me. So obviously if I increase it, I get more attenuation out of the calm setting. So that is the calm setting. The other thing I want to mention is this tape setting, or show you. This tape setting is wicked. I really like the sound of this tape setting, but now I'm actually analyzing and seeing what it's doing internally. When I hit the tape setting, the curve changes a little bit. You'll notice a little bit of a roll off coming on around, I'd say about the 67 hertz range. You're getting a little bit of this roll off, and you're also getting a slight bump at the 80 hertz range. Also in the high end, if I go from here to here, you'll notice a little bit of a change in the high end as well. If I turn this more to the right, as you can see, we get this quote unquote warmer sound, which you can see is a little bit more of a bump in the low end part of the spectrum. And if I go more to the tighter side, which is to the left, you notice that I'm getting more of a roll off on the top end, a little bit more of a roll off on the bottom end. And you notice that the top end, as far as everything, kind of smooths itself out just a little bit and is a little bit straighter in that regard. So that's what the tape setting looks like. Now, honestly, let's just hear what it sounds like. Sometimes when I feel like I got a little bit too much edginess on a mix, I can click the tape setting and it feels like it just gives me a little bit of kind of like a warmer sound. It takes the edge off of something. That's me personally, what I felt like when I clicked it, and I've used it a few times when I click tape just to get some of that edginess off of the sound. So let's take a listen to what it sounds like. So without first. Okay, now let's mess around with actually moving the actual slider. Left is tighter, to the right is warmer. Okay, let's try it out. Okay, so you can hear the characteristics with that tape function used at your own discretion, and you can kind of hear what it sounds like moving from left to right. Now, the other thing I want to show you is, and some people may overlook this, but to be honest, this is one of my favorite features in Master Plan. It's so simple, but so genius to me in the back of my mind, as far as being able to change my monitoring situation when I'm using the plugin. Sometimes I'll literally just put it on and use it for that. So here you have the N-10 setting, which in my opinion, and this is just me spitballing, kind of emulates and creates and changes my speakers to sound like NS10 speakers. Listen to what this sounds like, and then I'll tell you what the benefits of it possibly could be. So I'm gonna go through the monitoring situations. One is the N-10 setting, which is something that they've improved upon in this new update. We have the phone setting, which is great. Usually I'll hit this phone setting to check what my mix is gonna sound like on a phone where it's emulating that. This really reveals excessive high end to me. So I love turning it to phone just to see, oh, I'm wilding on the high end or I'm doing too much in the high end. Then you have this band function, which is basically a roll off or a cut on the low end, a cut on the high end, and just really kind of giving me this scoop where it just feels like it's just my mids, which is fun. It makes me feel like it's emulating kind of like my Auratone speaker, which I love to death. Then we have this mono function, self-explanatory, collapses the mix to mono. Then you have this dim setting, which is awesome. Some people might be like, why would I need that? Well, someone like me that when I'm mixing, I don't like to keep manipulating my monitor controller as far as my monitor volume. And then all of a sudden I'm blasting my monitors and I'm like, man, I should have never touched that. If I want to hear it loud, I can just say, okay, take off the dim, boom, listening, cool, and go right back to dim. Just a quick button to move back and forth to. Shout out Ryan Schwab for kind of putting me onto that as far as monitoring and having just like a one button loud back to, you know, regular listening kind of button. That's actually very powerful to me. And then you have the all function, which is self-explanatory. So now I'm gonna go through the different modes and let you hear what it sounds like. So starting with off, let's take tape off. And I'm gonna turn it up just a little bit so we can get a little volume here. All right, check this out. So you can hear all those different modes, and in all of those different modes, I did notice certain characteristics that I was like, oh, that's interesting. For instance, a big one was on the phone. Pay attention to how much the snare or that clap really stands out, where I was like, oh, you know what? I want to get that a little under control because I hear that slashing of the actual snare, and I need to kind of control kind of like the upper mids and the high end of it a bit. Listen to the phone setting with this particular clap. It's pretty aggressive. Now, granted, you can say, oh, I want that, cool. But to me, I was like, oh, so that's what's going to really pop out on that phone is that snare clap kind of sound. So in the back of my mind, sometimes I'll come to just these different settings to just get an understanding of how things are going to translate or what's going to get accentuated in the actual mix. Super powerful. Love that to death. Thank you for that. That is one of my favorite settings in Master Plan, to be honest with you. Before we go in the back end of it and just show you those real quick, what I do want to show you is they've moved some things around and changed a few buttons. For instance, this true peak used to be at the bottom, if I'm not mistaken, down here. They put it up here since. So you do have a true peak limiter function that you have that you can enable. Use it at your own discretion. The bypass, true peak, and unity. This is kind of where the bypass and unity was already, but it's just laid out just a little bit cleaner for me, just right in the front. Now, when we look at these meters down here, obviously we have this integrated, this short term, the peak, and showing you kind of some crest indications happening right here. They've also changed the preset where you have this actual button where you can cycle through presets really quickly and easily. Cool, awesome. That's just a simple little change that's like, yeah, that should be there. And then you have in the back end where I can literally now choose how I set up my LUF targets and things of that nature. -18 being more for Atmos and things of that nature. You have -8, which is kind of like a common, I'll say common, I'll be very careful with that, a common place where people will set their LUF targets and things of that nature. So now I can say, hey, here's my LUF target. And then when I go back into the plugin, now when I go to this, for instance, look at this short term and stuff like that, it will reflect those targets and light up green when I actually hit them. Check this out. And obviously, if I change those settings and things of that nature to other settings, then it will light up green and let me know, hey, you've hit your target when I actually change them. So you can manipulate the entire thing from the back end and choose how you want or what you want those targets to be within the plugin and things of that nature. Obviously, everything else is pretty self-explanatory, changing the oversampling modes and things of that nature. I'll be honest with you, I'm a big fan of just 96 in this plugin. I'm a really big fan of 96. I keep it there for the most part, to each his own. And then if you look at the plugin, obviously, you see the typical stuff that you may have seen before, as far as just at the bottom, like I've explained, seeing the peak where you can change things and stuff like that. So this is the newly updated master plan plugin at the time, as of the time of this recording. Like I said, use your own discretion and decide for yourself whether you enjoy it or want to try it for yourself. I'll leave a link in the description below. Once again, I'm very thankful to Musik Hack for sponsoring this video. I really appreciate you guys sponsoring this breakdown, and hope that you saw something of value that maybe perhaps you can use for yourself. So please make sure you comment, like, and subscribe. Also, remember to probably become a member of this channel as well, where you get a bunch of exclusive videos, exclusive Audio Nerds episodes, as well as mixing videos from me, mixing stuff from start to finish. We'll also be starting kind of like these classes for Diamond members, where we'll have these big group meetings, and basically you'll be able to come up in the Zoom and talk to me and get information, send me your mixes, the whole nine. That's coming soon for our Diamond members, and there's a bunch of other stuff in there as well. I hope you enjoyed. Please follow us at HelpMeDevon on Instagram. You can join our Discord. There's so much stuff in that description. Please fish around and see what you go to. But definitely Musik Hack. I'll leave a link in the description below for you if you're interested in trying Master Plan for yourself. And until next time, y'all.